Hi, Dex. How are you?
Good, Judy. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on board today for our discussion on SEO. And Dex Zalec is one of the SEO specialists on the DMD team. And today we're going to discuss about why we need SEO and digital marketing and why businesses should be using this on a regular basis.
Yeah,
So, Dex, can you explain what SEO is and what that acronym is, first of all?
sure. It's pretty much defined as search engine optimization. And the best way I like to put it is basically saying that when someone Googles something or does a search on a search engine, that you want your website to show up or your business to show up. And so the whole thought process behind it is optimizing your website so that when people search for relevant terms or your business, you appear and not your competitors, basically.
So basically, it's raising your rankings and your brand awareness on Google search, correct?
Absolutely. The other cool thing about it is it's free leads and it's free, pretty much customers too. One of the things I like to say, because I think there's a common misconception with SEO because it's like a mystical, mystified
Right.
type of thing that you would invest in. It's a
Mhm.
lot like farming in the sense where it's like you have to put in all this effort and you do all these things, but when you do it right, you end up with these great effects and you end up having free leads and free customers. And that's why SEO is so important because similarly, if you think about paying for ads, it's kind of like hunting in the sense where it's like you put money into it, you put in effort, and you get something out of it. And
Mhm.
that's pretty much the fundamental difference between the two. And that's how I
Mhm.
like to explain it. It's not a perfect analogy, but it really paints a clear picture on why SEO is so important.
Right. So a lot of people get confused on what search engine optimization is versus paid search, the Google sponsor ads. Can you share a bit what the contrast and differences are?
Sure. Kind of like what I alluded to before, a lot of it is SEO is pretty much getting your website ranked in the organic section of Google predominantly or Bing or any other search engine, but mostly Google because of just how much people use Google.
Right.
It's basically the idea of you want to rank organically and without paying for any ads. So your website comes up first, right below the ads. You could also pay for ads if you wanted to show up on top. Does that kind of
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I want to also incorporate, like, from my experiences in that is, SEO is definitely more of a longer term investment and it's more evergreen, meaning that it stays on the internet until someone takes it off as far as
Yeah.
anything goes, like blogs, videos, podcasts, content, websites, articles, and the actual content on the website as well. Paid media on this Google sponsored ads, it's more immediate. I think it's great if you are starting and launching a new business and you need some juice right away. So, do you feel that maybe paid search is a good avenue in jump starting and then eventually migrating to SEO? Or do you think it's good to have both platforms running?
It's a great question. It unfortunately it depends, right? My thought process is it depends on how big the budget is,
Right.
right? If you have enough budget for ads, absolutely, it's a great way to hit the ground running really quickly, and then also taking hopefully some of those funds into improving your site's SEO, and eventually it's a thought through process where not only are you ranking and paying for ads, but you're also to ranking organically, so you're getting free leads, free traffic, and free targeted people who are interested in what you have to offer as a business.
Mhm. And Dex, just to give people a realistic expectation, when a new client comes in and starts an SEO campaign with you,
Hmm.
typically everyone wants to see it pretty quickly in, a couple weeks or so. I mean, what is a realistic time frame?
It's funny, you ask any agency and you kind of get a different answer, but most people would agree that it's somewhere between, I would say, 4 months to close to a year. It depends on how
Right.
competitive the industry is. It depends on how much SEO your competitors are doing. And there's a lot of work that you need to do initially, and it takes a while for Google to pick up on some of those changes and ultimately, slowly brings you up to the top.
Right. And, I don't want to get too techy on some of the terms for technical
Sure.
SEO for the audience, but I mean, there is two camps. One is on-page SEO, the other is off-page SEO. And can you just share a bit about what the difference of those two are?
Sure. So it's on-site is pretty much what you would expect, the definition of it being. So anything on your website, optimizing your website and making meta descriptions, or meta tags, alt tags, basically optimizing things on your site to tell Google, hey, this is what my website's about. Here's what you're looking for. And so we're
Right,
going to optimize those things so that Google can understand that. The
right.
other half of this is offsite SEO, which is building backlinks, building press releases, doing guest posts, things like that. That gets a little bit more like technical and convoluted, but basically it comes down to building links and having other websites that are relevant to your industry point links back to your website and show Google that you are an authority in that space. And that's pretty much the gist of it.
Right. So offsite, on the off-page SEO is essentially just any marketing campaign that drives into the website. So content marketing, videos, podcasting, the backlinks, like what you said, blogs, anything that drives social media, obviously, anything that drives into the site is considered off-page. That's where the real external marketing begins. And just from us working together, I've noticed that you're more focused on technical SEO. I'm more focused on the editorial SEO. So just to share with the audience, the editorial SEO for on my side and some of the writers is we do embed some of the top search keywords into our content and build a theme around that. And how does that in turn affect your technical SEO?
Well, there's a saying, I'm not sure if the audience has heard of it, but the saying goes, content is king. And in
Right,
a lot of regards,
exactly.
you need to have good content, right? Google is going to look at your page, and if it doesn't, deem your content as authoritative or of high quality, you're not
Right.
as likely to rank. So a lot of these things have to go hand in hand. I would say that the foundation here is good content writing, making sure that it flows well. Google understands that it's high authority and trustworthy. But once we have that foundation, we can build upon that. We can grow and have other pages link back to it. We can build backlinks and we can build out a whole campaign essentially.
Right. And we typically practice white hat SEO and not black hat for 1,000 other reasons that we don't want to
Yep.
get blacklisted. We've seen that happen with other agencies and clients in the past, and we do it the correct way, and we focus more on solid quality content and editorial. Dex, what do you think is a legitimate timeline for a client that comes in and let's say hires DMD for SEO services that you will, you mentioned 4 months to a year to see some sort of realistic appearance on Google search, on rankings, local rankings, and organic.
Mm-hmm.
But how long do you think a client should stay with SEO?
I think 6 months is a really good point where it's like you spend enough time with that agency, you can either get a gut check on whether you think they're actually giving you value or if you think that they're kind of like blowing smoke a little bit. But the other thing too is by 6 months, you should absolutely be able to see some numbers moving up. You should start to see some trends in the right direction. And if you're not at that point, then like maybe it's time to hop ship and explore other options. But 6 months is generally a really good spot, I like to say.
Yeah. And I actually push it even a little further and say at least a year, a few years, because let's say, in cases where we have gotten, let's say medical clients up in the top 3 rankings or organic, something to remember is they don't stay there. And a lot of times I think the clients think, oh, we did all this work for 3 to 5 years. We're number 1 on any of these search terms for medical. And they forget that it's a lot like being an athlete, like a tennis player, where you're ranked number 1, but you don't practice or play. You will fall back and other competitors come in and they take over. So the consistency of SEO services and what you're doing on a monthly basis is really critical. What we do typically is we match our core services in SEO with the technical audits that you do, right, on the quarterly level.
Yep. Absolutely. I'd be interested too, Judy, to explore kind of like your experiences with just working with new clients in general. When you bring up SEO, what is the general consensus? How do they feel about it? Is it always like this magic black box or like, how is it?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people that come in, they do not understand what SEO is, period. It's a very nebulous term. It's very difficult to crystallize what you do. So what I do is I do produce monthly reports on web traffic and rankings. And we also show, like on your side, your technical audits and reports on these technical warning errors of what we fixed and broken links. So as much as we can concrete our work and show them, even screenshot, oh, you were ranked, for stem cell Newport Beach, as top 3 rankings, or, a contact center in Florida as the top 2-3 rankings. If we can somehow crystallize it, even showing a screenshot, I think it's proving that we are producing and progressing. But SEO is a very nebulous term. A lot of people I find are intimidated because they don't understand the inner workings of it and the mechanics. Mm-hmm. But I think in time when, it is our job to somewhat educate and share what we are doing so the client understands exactly what they're paying for and what results that they're seeing. But I think when they give you the trust for the first 6 months and just let you do the work, and build the groundwork of it, and then they see and they start seeing, oh wow, you've got the blogs and the social media, and then you've got the metadata, and then we see that we're ranking for our own brand terms, and we're start seeing ranking for our own industry terms. That's when they start seeing, oh wow, so this does,
right.
So yeah,
interesting. Okay.
And is there something that you've experienced in the past with any clients or, any projects that we've worked on where you feel that there's a misunderstanding or misconception of what we're trying to do and the client just isn't making the connection or doesn't understand, where you feel that you need to elaborate more, explain on?
Sure. At DMD, like, we're pretty clear about our intentions, and we're pretty clear about like what you'd expect working with us. So I would say, like, generally the communication is pretty open and the expectations are understood. Definitely in the past, working, with previous clients of my own and things like that, I've had a lot of issues with that, where it's some client expects to bring in, put in $200 for 1 month, and then all of a sudden expects, 500 new clients or leads or whatever it is.
Right.
Some of these are just really unrealistic, but for the most part, if you're able to just set realistic expectations and you're able to define what's going to come in the next couple months, and then when we achieve those deadlines and we achieve those goals, it becomes pretty simple to understand that we're trying to build another channel of marketing for you, which ultimately it turns into free leads, free sales, and things like that.
So the budget, did you say 200 a month?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd be more like 2,000 a month. But anyway, the budget is definitely a deciding factor, because based on the client's budget per month is going to give leadway on how much we can do and scale. And it is at least a few thousand at a minimum that we do. And the larger, obviously, the larger the scale of the budget, the more we can do. And it also depends on how aggressive you want to be as well. So it's kind of an unlimited level as far as how aggressive, how quickly, and how deep you want to go with SEO as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's spot on. It depends on a lot of things, right? It depends on how far back your website is and how much work it needs to be done. It depends on the industry. It depends on what your competitors are doing. But for the most part, you're exactly right. There's a lot of work that goes into SEO, whether it's, seen in a report or not. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and optimizing all of your pages. And I'm not going to get the technical details, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. And the more money that's thrown into it, the faster we can make these changes and then ultimately help you to achieve your goals.
Right. And just a last subject that I want to kind of quickly discuss is the branding issue. So typically when we take upon a credit on a client, we do discuss their branding and their messaging, what keywords will benefit them, because their branding is going to dictate how we market and how we do our SEO as well, and how we build out our campaigns. So that's very critical. And there's definitely a production cycle that a lot of people don't see that we go through. So, you know, there's a production and a preparation for graphics, for design, for the web revamp, or in your case, a lot of the technical auditing work that needs to be done. And there's a cycle that goes through as well. So are there any last things you want to share about SEO that you think a business or let's say a startup company needs to know?
This sounds like very marketing-y as an answer, but the best time to do this was yesterday to start.
Mhm.
It's so important, and it takes a while for Google to recognize changes, and you know,
Right.
the sooner you get on board with it and start kind of like working towards achieving some of these goals and optimizing your website, the further along you'll be. So it's really important to kind of think about it and take it seriously. But then
Right.
also, to what you alluded to earlier, is understanding that this is not an overnight process. It takes some time, but
Right.
eventually, like, the results will yield themselves.
Mhm.
That's what I would say.
Well, thank you so much, Dex. I appreciate your time. I think that was a
Absolutely.
nice, quick, like recap of what SEO is and kind of introduce people to this medium that they don't know about. And so we can be found at digitalmarketingdoctor.us. Thank you, Dex.
Thank you, Judy.
Bye.
Bye now.